Access granted. Welcome to the Bunker Codes podcast. Nothing here is medical, dental, vision, legal, or financial advice. We're all on the same team, wishing for peaceful resolution where everyone can get along and be left alone. Enjoy your stay. Bye.
Welcome back, everyone, to another fantastic episode of I'm Gonna Talk, and you're gonna listen, and Bunker Codes podcast episode something, I don't know. And this one's not filmed in front of a live studio audience, and it's happening at a really odd time, like time of the day. But I think the topics from the other night finally caught up to me. Watching some indie movies and reading some things, listening to some things, and I want to talk about a whole bunch of stuff like always. And I don't even know what order, but in my last so sit back and get comfortable, and whatever it is you drink, get it. And I'm going to do my best. First of all, I want to preface this by saying this was never meant to be a doom and gloom podcast. Or, fear-mongering, things like that. In fact, when I started the podcast out, I deliberately wanted it to be positive. There was obviously the episode that I ranted about boomers, but episode and a half or so that I ranted about boomers that wasn't very positive, but also, like, when you feel constantly attacked by a portion of an identity, you get defensive. So, but fear sells. And I was watching a YouTuber, and I think it was, gosh darn, I'm gonna forget his name again. I need to write down all the YouTubers that I watch. Also, when I do write the Bunker Buddy companion book, I will write. There will be new updates of YouTubers in there. By the way, oh, that's right, Louis Rossmann. I was watching Louis Rossmann, and he was talking about the diminishing returns of YouTube ad revenue, and YouTube is a job and stuff. And he said something interesting. He was talking about how almost every channel has transitioned into fear. And not to call it, fear porn or fear mongering, but everybody kind of handling and digesting the current situation in different ways. And one could argue, as I think he was working towards, that it's kind of an advent of the algorithm. But you could, which I don't disagree with, the algorithm probably is pushing it. But I think it's important to realize that if the algorithm is some sort of AI, it's still going to be digitally manifesting what we are already feeling and going through. So it doesn't really invalidate, I would say, what we're feeling. And sure, there's going to be some grifters, no doubt. We know that. In fact, it doesn't matter if it's fear-mongering or crypto. There's, so I could argue crypto was really hot and a bunch of people switched over to crypto. I think it was the same thing with, ghost hunting, and video game YouTubers, or non-video game YouTubers switching over to video games when they see Fortnite or Minecraft, Dota, League of Legends, they saw everybody else doing 10, 100, 1,000 times the numbers as them, and it's like you can walk around in a game made of cubes and you don't have to produce any content and people just watch this garbage. So and no, I'm not sorry. Here's my negative. I'm gonna cash in my negative token for the episode. I used to bust my ass playing tons and tons and tons of video games, different video games, trying to do different narrations and different ways of looking at games, trying to be entertaining. And all that would be recommended, even in my own feed and at the end of my own videos, this was like maybe 2013, 2012, 2013, 2014, was all Minecraft videos. And none of their videos, the algorithm hadn't linked any of their videos back to my videos. So all of the traffic was going one direction. And I didn't, sit back in my chair and shake my fist at the clouds. I was just like, okay, whatever. Well, I guess I'm just screwed. And I kept doing what I was doing and tried to find things that I was interested in, because that's how you attract other people that are interested in what you're doing, which I did. And I didn't pull any amazing numbers. I didn't make a single penny, but at least I amused enough people to justify chugging along and trying to share different things that I knew and that I liked and that I was comfortable with until I resonated with people. So anyway, the point is, like, there's always going to be fads, right? And there's always going to be grifters. And here's another example. Like, I like watching Tasmanian Devil videos, but I don't think there's been any new Tasmanian Devil videos. I mean, like the actual creature in like 9 years or something like that, which is really sad because I know the little buggers only live a little while. And so the YouTube algorithm just keeps recommending me Tasmanian Devil videos from like 10 years ago, which is really depressing because I know all those critters are now dead. And there's a lot of reasons behind that. Well, A, they don't live very long, and B, there's this horrible virus that attacks them, and they really have a challenge of keeping the little buggers alive. But they're just the cutest things on the planet. But yeah, they're little monsters. And so the algorithm can only do what it can do. It can't generate new content. Like, it's not that kind of AI, although that would be cool if there was like an AI YouTube that could be like, oh, this guy wants to see more Tasmanian Devil videos. I'll just make new videos for him, right? It can't do that. It's people uploading this stuff. It's people either resonating with the algorithm or the algorithm is resonating with them. Which is why I think sometimes the algorithm can't decide whether something it's going to track something positive or something negative. And I'll give you some examples. Like that new Ninja Turtle Shredder's Revenge game, fucking garbage, right? Absolute garbage, objectively. The color grading, the responsiveness, it's just not a good game. But it got 10 out of 10s from everybody. Yeehaw! And it's what we would call toxic positivity, right? And it's this remake hype, this remake culture, where unlike an objectively extremely good game like Streets of Rage 4 is, I don't really know how much. I don't remember it going viral, like a viral positive review echo chamber. In fact, I think in some ways, like, the reviews were really mixed because people didn't like the art style. Which, ironically, like, I don't like the art style of Shredder's Revenge. And I could only find one or two other people that didn't like the art style, but that just means it wasn't divisive. Or it means there was some system in place excuse me, sorry, that was burying, deleting, hiding, censoring dissent. Like, I know that sounds kind of dumb because it's a video game, but I don't know, right? Like, I looked on Steam and all over the YouTube comments of like every single Shredder's Revenge video, and I only found 2, 3, and Gab, and I only found maybe like 4 people that didn't like the art style. So I could say based on that spread that it probably just wasn't as divisive. And I don't want to say that like more people played Turtles in Time 4 than played like Streets of Rage 2, because that'd be weird. Obviously, like the Turtles franchise is way bigger than the Streets of Rage franchise. But like there was clearly way more people upset at the art direction of Streets of Rage 4 than Shredder's Revenge. So, not to turn this into a video game thing, because probably most of you are about to turn me off. Because I'm turning you off. But, the point is, though, is that, like, that's... Shredder's Revenge is, like, this toxic, viral positivity, right? So then you have, like, Resident Evil 2 Remake. And, like, one of my original YouTube channels got as big as it got, A, because of my auditing videos, and B, because I streamed Resident Evil, which is like one of the most beloved franchises on, or hated, depending on who you ask, on the entire planet. Like, but it's big to me because of the virus aspect, and the characters are just really relatable. Even Boulder punching Chris, they're just great, fun. Even like the bad guys are all fun. It's all fun. Everyone, even the bad guys, everyone's having fun. Even when they're chasing people around with giant eyeballs on their shoulders. You just imagine the whole thing as everyone having fun. Anyway, so like Resident Evil 2 Remake, which is just objectively just a dog shit of a game. In pretty much every way. The original color grading was bad. Gun flash, like from the bullets exiting the barrel, is damn near like seizure inducing. The zombies can take like 40 headshots and keep coming back over and over again. I counted once because I had like infinite MP5, and one time I just kept shooting one in the head, I don't know, for like a good minute, and it just kept coming. I mean, the game is broken. And then that's not even getting into all the locks, the just mountain of unnecessary locks. I can handle the backtracking, but there's only like really 1 or 2 viable paths, which made it extremely boring. And then all the unnecessary 30, 40 locks in the game, puzzles. And I don't mind puzzles, but like just the different amount of combo locks was extremely frustrating. So it kills the momentum of the game. Not a good game by any stretch, and the length of the game, everything, like, it's like a 50-minute game, 50, 60, 70-minute game max after your first playthrough. And then the multiple, the B stories, the cutscenes out of order. Just everything's messed up about that game, sorry. It needed like another year, and it needed to be really streamlined, and it wasn't. But the reviews to that game are overwhelmingly positive. And then you take Resident Evil 3 Remake, which basically fixes every single problem from Resident Evil 2 Remake, is way, way more streamlined, way less obnoxious puzzles. Everything about the game is more fun. The way the weapons unlock is the way everyone's used to. Like, everything about the game is an improvement. Streamlined and updated and fixed in every single way possible. And the reviews for it were overwhelmingly negative. For no reason. No objective reason that I could find. And then, even like narratively, the game was just better in every way, but the reviews were overwhelmingly negative. And I would argue that when people see that negative reviews are trending, they post negative reviews, and when positive reviews are trending, they post positive reviews. But I don't know how the algorithm decides And so when Resident Evil 4 Remake came out, every video was 10 out of 10 masterpiece. And there's only one YouTuber I could find that made a contrary video. And he got nuked. Like he got ratioed video after video. I don't have his YouTube pulled up again. This isn't a professional podcast. I guess I better pull it up since I brought it up. Give him a shout out. Okay, I take that back. There's two. The first one is Crobat, which made a video called Soul versus Soulless Resident Evil 4 Comparison. It's a 37-minute video. It takes more work than all of the dick-worshipping 10 out of 10 masterpiece videos combined. And he has like a 2/3 to like 1/3 like to dislike ratio. He's got 43,000 upvotes and 34,000 downvotes, which is more positive than negative by about 10,000, but that's still that doesn't mean that he got like ratioed to hell. That means that it's extremely divisive, right? This video's got 1.2 million views in only 2 weeks. That's more views than he has subs, which means this actually either somewhat went viral or people shared the shit out of it. So now example number 2. The other one is the Electric Underground. And there's a couple where you can type like Resident Evil 4 Remake not good or Resident Evil 4 Remake fail. Almost none will come up. And they'll almost be all positive, or there will be people actively hating on anyone with dissenting opinions. So I know like this is like a really long side quest of a point here. But really what it is like the way groupthink is working right now is really hard to discern. You know, I wouldn't profess that somebody's like flicking a switch and all of a sudden it's like, let's decide if Miss Marvel does good or bad. And then it flicks a switch like, let's say Miss Marvel does bad. Like, or let's say that Lord of the Rings, the prequel, the whatever the Amazon one was, which could have been edited a lot better and it probably would have done okay without the sloppy editing. Not to mention not making it for modern audiences and all that. Like, if the editing alone would have been better, I bet you more people would have watched it, but no amount of like woke culture positivity is going to fix shitty editing. So, you know, I don't think someone flicked a switch and decided whether the algorithm would do the show good or bad. I think all that's organic, right? The algorithm only responds to which way it thinks something's trending. And then if something's divisive, I don't know what it does. I don't know if it errs on positivity or negativity. It probably gets confused, but like if you try to find negative Resident Evil 4 Remake videos, the algorithm is going to push you every single positive review. And I don't know why that is. And so these are very, very simple examples of just video games, right? Like, so take that and overlay that with like how bad everything is right now in the rest. And it's just a distraction. No, try to follow along. We're having an adult conversation. So overlay that concept I just gave you with like how bad things are right now. When you can hear street racers until 2 or 3 in the morning when you can walk around from the time till sunup until the time the sun's down and see fentanyl overdoses in the street on every street corner, when 911 has a waiting, you're put on hold, calling 9, which is, and again, no fault to the 911 people. The call centers, they're amazing 99% of the time. There's a systemic problem in society right now, and I think the YouTube algorithm knows it, and it knows that everybody's scared, and I think it's going to drive people towards solutions until it gets overridden. If the solutions are too scary or crazy, people suggesting bad things, again, stay away from those people. We're all on the same side. We just want to be left alone. But I still think the YouTube algorithm's like pragmatic enough to where it's not going to steer people away from, like, let's say, home defense. So, like, if I type in best weapon for home defense, I'm doing this totally organic. Okay, the first guy's holding a shotgun and an AR. That's from a tactical rifleman. I've never seen his. The next one, top 5 guns for home defense. That's IV-88, which I'm not even surprised because their channel is just massive, and Eric and Barry and Chad are all awesome. I don't know what. I don't remember what rifles and pistols and shotguns and stuff they have in that, but like, the first video's got 1.4 million views. IV-88's got 6.4 million views. I can't believe Hard to Hurt's number 3. He's awesome. They've got Icy Mike's. They've got a new show right now that's really, really good. Oh, this is insane. So, three of the 5 are Icy Mike's Hard to Hurt stuff, which is great. His video is great. He's not. Well, he was prior SWAT, prior police, so he's not anti-gun. In fact, they do lots of handgun stuff too, but he primarily is how to defend yourself against blunt and bladed and spray and tasey objects. So interesting. And so almost all these are Icy Mikes. So I mean, maybe it is trying to point you away from guns now, but see, like, I could look at this from the other side and say, is it trying to point us away from guns? Or does it know that a lot of people don't have access to guns, and so the algorithm's trying to figure out other things? Because the very first response still is a guy holding a shotgun and an AR, and he's got a pistol jammed in the front of his pants. Which is pretty funny. I don't know who Tactical Rifleman is, but I might have to watch that and see if there's some kind of twist in there, but somehow I doubt it, because the point I'm going with here is, like, it's situational, right? You should be able to pick any tool you want, and I assume, at least in these top 2, that's probably, I know the IV-88s, that's what they say. But, I don't know, the first guy, Icy Mike's stuff is more like, I like his videos because they're more like what not to choose. To, like, don't be an idiot and choose something that doesn't work. Which is what I was talking to my friend about last night. Because a lot of people don't think through self-defense situations enough to try to decide what would really work and how their mindset's really going to work. So they haven't really thought it through. So that's what Icy Mike focuses, Hard to Hurt, that's what he focuses on. Because he really wants people to think through it and then choose. Not choose something and then try to think through it, which I get. And that's exactly the problem of the first topic that I want to get into, which is AR-15s for home defense. Because a governor of a certain state that just banned the sale of new ARs, said we don't need ARs for home defense. Nobody in the state needs ARs for home defense. And you're like, how the hell did we get from Streets of Rage to... Well, I think that, like, video games have been slowly, subtly trying to get us here for a long time, right? We grew up on Ninja Turtles fighting people that dressed all in black, or that were attacking the city and stealing everything, right? Streets of Rage, where you're walking around trying to, like, fight gangs that have taken over the streets. So you've got foot soldiers that have taken over the streets, gangs that have taken over the streets. Resident Evil, where you've got zombies taking over the streets, which, you know, meth zombies, fentanyl zombies, like, it doesn't matter, take your pick. Like, Gen X, our entire life has been video games trying to tell us that this shit was going to happen, you know? And those of us who weren't taught, like, went to YouTube to learn, and the rest of us that knew went to YouTube to teach everybody, and then the rest of us are kind of in the middle, and then the next generation has no fucking clue what to do, because not everything, a lot of stuff's been banned now, and so if all they hear is you don't need an AR-15 for home defense, they don't know any better, right? And YouTube could just suppress all that stuff, but I'm going to guess that the algorithm is going to overwhelmingly see videos telling you from people who actually know, and from people who have trained their whole life, trained other people, military, law enforcement, contractors, like, you name it. The overwhelming vast majority of YouTube videos are going to tell you what you do and don't probably need and how to think through it. Because there might be, like, there are some, like, dissenting opinions of why you don't need ARs for home defense because of overpenetration. And that's completely viable, but a 22 round can overpenetrate. And people might say, well, then shotgun XYZ. And it's like, yeah, but you can't have a lot of rounds in one. And they banned standard capacity magazines, new sales, a while ago. There's just, like, there's many shells that you can put in shotguns, but it's only a matter of time before all that just dries up, right? So if you're searching for a YouTube video of how to defend your house against multiple attackers because you're scared of it, because you're scared of that scenario because of street racers or gangs or people all in black taking the city hostage months and months and months at a time, and police not doing anything, you're going to start searching for videos of how to best defend your house or your block. Like, the YouTube algorithm's going to respond to that. It's going to go, oh crap, people are searching a lot. Because it doesn't know, unless the YouTube algorithm overlords started, like, downvoting this stuff in, like, how, like, the learning algorithm works for, like, what to add pluses and minuses to. The algorithm doesn't know if guns are good or bad, or if people are good or bad, or if street takeovers are good or bad, or if street racers are good or bad, or motorcycle gangs, or fentanyl zombies. Like, the algorithm doesn't know what's good or bad. It's trying to solve problems so it can serve up videos and get better ad revenue, right? That's all it's trying to do. So someone's like, I need to defend my home from 3 attackers. The YouTube algorithm's like, boop, 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 boop. Okay, cool. I found a video where somebody's like, hey, you can defend your home from 3 attackers with an AR-15, and here's why. And then it finds another video where it's like, oh, maybe AR-15s aren't as good. Maybe you need a shotgun, but, like, a shotgun with a big magazine or something, you know? Because they have these, like, Mossbergs with just, like, these huge magazines on them. which are now the new sales are all illegal. And I never got to get one. And they're these humongous box mags that hold tons of shot. Anyway, who knows? It doesn't matter. This is America. And so if Florida man decides that 20 alligators could attack his house and he wants to have a belt-fed shotgun with a chainsaw grip on the pump or whatever, you want to run around with a DP-12 or something with like dual magazine too. Like, who cares? This is America, right? Because you think, well, over-penetration is my number one concern, but I still want a large capacity, and so you're running around with the DP-12, whatever. Fine, this is America. So you're gonna you try to search for that stuff on YouTube, and the algorithm's gonna try to match you up. It doesn't care about like positivity or negativity. It's just kind of looking for interaction. I would argue that it's looking for divisiveness. It's looking for a conversation, right? And so that Resident Evil 4 video by Crobat, where it's like 43 minutes long, it's an intensely divided video. It sees other people slamming that video. It's going to serve that up as like the number one video. And that video is going to start teabagging all of the other toxically positive videos where everything's like one direction, because it's going to be like, oh, hey, everybody must have thought this video was really interesting because it went crazy viral and it's got 10 times the views as everything else. And then you start to realize that being toxically positive or toxically negative may have immediate results, but discourse and talking something through, the pros and the cons of why something would work or why something's good and why something's bad, I think has a lot more long-term impact, because nobody remembers Shredder's Revenge anymore, and nobody's going to remember this Resident Evil 4 remake in a month because it's a dog shit game. It's going to be like the other ones where the modder community keeps it going with slutty outfits and some tiny updates, quality of life improvements here and there. And maybe the game's going to be supported. Maybe a year from now it'll get a DLC like 7 and 8 did. I don't know. But the point is like, when you're searching for something, like for example, are AR-15s good for home defense? Prepper's Bunker Outdoors talks about this all the time. Like, a lot of people on YouTube that already have their opinions made up are only looking for echo chambers to already validate what they want. But people who genuinely don't know are looking for good discourse, right? And then people that are haters are just looking for videos that are far in the other direction so they can go shit on them. So when a governor tells you that AR-15s aren't good for home defense, you have to really wonder like where they got that information, where besides over penetration, which again is a problem with every single rifle round, if you don't know what you're doing and you don't know backstop and you don't follow gun safety rules and you don't have a plan for where your kids, your family are going to be in a home invasion, it's besides that, what do you really have to go on? Like you're going to have to go look it up and you're going to go, hey, he says these aren't good for home invasions, and you go ask YouTube, and YouTube's going to be, or you go search the news, and you go search all the times where people have successfully defended their homes with AR-15s, or you go on Collion Noir, and he tells you all the times that people have successfully defended their homes with AR-15s, or you go look at all the videos that debunk how scary they are, how complicated they are to use. They're very easy to use. They have no recoil. If you're behind them, if you're the one shooting, they're not even that loud, which is crazy. Unless you have a short barrel, in which case I can't help you. you're running around with a short barreled AR, then you're on your own, because you're going to be a noisy bastard. So, I think what I'm trying to say is here, you can't trust the system, man. No. My dad's not a phone. Duh. YouTube's still there. People can still make up their own minds. And the other kind of swirling part of this topic revolved around fear-mongering. And people aren't generating fear. People are scared. And they are searching YouTube for how to address the thing, how to react, how to respond to the things that they're scared about. And yes, that could be driving the algorithm, but it's only attaching to things that people have already made because they already know that people are going to be scared, because the rest of us have known about this for a long time. You know, Shadowrun, Cyberpunk, Ninja Turtles, Resident Evil, like the virus is coming out. Like these video games have been telling us that this shit's gonna happen since we were kids. Like, it's the whole like Star Wars versus Star Trek, like utopia versus dystopia. Like, it's all there. Like, nobody thought Star Trek was actually gonna happen. Nobody thinks everything's gonna be amazing in this big like communist utopia where everything's free and nobody gets paid. Nobody has to pay for their houses. Like, that's why Star Trek was like escapism, because nobody actually believes that shit can happen. You can't generate something from nothing and just have starships fly around that just magically create everything for you. As long as you can go get dilithium in the dilithium mines. Nobody believes that. Or there wouldn't be piracy. There wouldn't be piracy because nobody would ever need to go take anything, and yet there's pirates in Ferengi. You know, it's the United Federation of Planets being this huge, tyrannical, communist army that can impose their will on the universe. Except they just put this, like, thin, cutesy layer on top of it. Like, Star Trek is satire. You know, it's an idealistic satire. People get mad at Starship Troopers. Oh, it's this big fascist empire. No, it's just satire. Calm down. Star Trek is just, you know, monks in space with a giant political overtones over it. Like, we grew up being able to think for ourselves. Things didn't need to be remade for modern audiences for us, because it was foreshadowing everything that was going to happen based on everything that's happened before. And it's going to happen again. The only difference is now we have these like AI algorithms that can kind of serve the information back to us. So, yes, you still have grifters creating new information to capitalize on it. And news YouTubers, I say news in like air quotes, that just like doom scroll everything and tell you like the worst of the worst, then they really have no skin in the game, because they're like, everything is gonna be the end. Play Raid Shadow Legends. Like, or everyone who's trying to like sell gold. Yeah, there are some YouTubers that do like legitimately believe in gold and silver and no problem with that. Then you have other ones that don't actually legitimately believe in it at all, and they're still promoting gold. And it's just like, dude, you don't believe in gold at all. Like, but this isn't throwing shade at several YouTubers I know that like have gold ads that actually believe in gold. I would bet though, if I dug into it, the YouTubers that like truly believe in gold don't have your standard gold advertisements because most of them have their own gold places that they already buy gold and silver from, and they promote those places, which I think is perfectly valid, because you should be, if you are going to get into gold and silver because you've already prepped on everything else, your best bet's to find someone local anyway that you can work with. Don't trust ads online. That's for sure. Do your own research, right? So I think it's got to pass like this. It's the same thing with self-defense. Like, there's a lot of self-defense videos. I think, was it Sensei Seth, I think, which is another really good self-defense YouTuber. He was the one that like debunked a lot of those like self-defense tactics for people who don't really want to take their defense seriously, and like most of them don't work, and it's just to create a viral video. So you're gonna see a lot of that. But once you've read a few, I think it's easy to start telling the difference. The most important thing is to be there with an open mind and see if it passes the smell test. Watch a few, and then instead of getting stuck in echo chambers of like what you already believe, try to think about what makes the most sense for you, because self-defense, responding to the fear and uncertainty, the measured responses that are made calmly without emotion, where the goal and intent is to simply be left alone and stay away from crazy people. The good news is there's a lot of YouTubers who cater to very, very calm, measured responses. So I think I'll leave that topic at that for now. And then I'll have some other topics in a second. Or a minute. I don't know. Alrighty, part 2 of the episode. Took a little break. And I'm back. And part of this I'm not 100% sure if I covered. I sort of talked about like fentanyl zombies, meth zombies. I wrote about that in my books fairly early on. I still think like a lot of my predictions were really, really good. And even if some of them are metaphors and a lot of it was a big heaping dose of copium. But in where I live, which is the Pacific Northwest, up and down the I-5. Oh shoot, there goes my boom mic thing. Hold on, gosh darn. There I was trying to get all comfortable like I tell everyone else to do. Someday when everything is better, I'm gonna have a much better professional boom mic, and I cannot wait. I love doing these podcasts. Okay. Meth zombies versus fentanyl zombies. The weird thing is like fentanyl, I think, is a relatively newer thing, and whereas like meth, crack, heroin is like last generation, although it's still very much around. Cheaper, easier to get street drugs are predominant now, but not completely taken over. So you can still see somebody throwing a meth fit and having a fentanyl overdose like on the same street, which is just wild. I never would have expected that. Like I've seen people OD, in my lifetime, but I just walk around them and keep going. They don't want help. If they're the street ones. Obviously, if I was like at a gathering and I saw somebody having some kind of a medical problem, I would call my co-host. But like, if I'm on the streets, it's just presumed that they don't want help, which goes to normalcy bias. A lot of folks still try to help them. Narcan's like a big deal. I'm still really, really iffy on Narcan. I've seen some statistics say most of them would have lived anyway, and then I've seen other ones say no seconds count and you got to get Narcan in all of them right away. But that just reminds me of a certain other thing that they said everyone had to have or they'll die. So I don't know about that. I'm not a doctor. This isn't medical advice. But it's natural people's propensity to want to help another human being. But like, along with getting them any sort of rehab, which is in large part a lost cause, but not completely, but a large part a lost cause. Getting them housed, mostly a lost cause. Not all, but some. Like, if I was going to do it, there would be a concerted effort trying to find the ones that actually want help and actually want to be safe. Getting them, I think I've talked about this like in a prior episode. Like, you know, if it was me, I'd be building like fortresses and finding the ones that actually want to be safe and actually want help. Because it's obviously heartbreaking seeing vulnerable people out there thrown into what essentially seems like gen pop of a freaking prison. I think that's horrible, because I know horrible things happen to the women, trafficking, whole 9 yards. Somebody just got attacked by like a homeless's dog the other day. Homeless are attacking people, people are attacking homeless. It's not good. And I'm not saying like segregation is like some amazing like fix all answer. I'm just saying, like, much with like any war-torn country, you're gonna have people seeking asylum that actually need to be taken care of, protected, because they're vulnerable. And then you're gonna have the rest that are just like fighting age males that are gonna be a humongous problem. And they didn't defend their area and now they want to come into your area. And then you're gonna have traffickers, you know, snakes in the grass that may even be family, you know, trafficking people around. And the trafficking up and down I-5 is horrible. And there's people that do horrible things to women, including homeless women, that I'm sure don't want to be in those situations. And nothing's being done about it. And I still believe it's because people don't have the empathy to actually try. They're so entangled in virtue signaling, so they can go home to their protected lives and feel better about themselves, that they don't take into consideration being strategic about who they house. And I'm not saying like you'd have some kind of scoring system where people would be like a lost cause or not, but like, I would say the vast majority of these people do not want help. They do not want to get off drugs, and they do not want to live in a building. And if they did, they would destroy it. As one of my friends put it, you could give them $1 million and they would still be dead in a month. It doesn't. And this happens whenever you release drugs onto a vulnerable population, which I've heard other YouTubers call like chemical warfare, and I would agree with that. Whether you're releasing a virus on a certain demographic that has a higher propensity to share it, or if you're giving a chemical to a culture that would share it, or a combination of both in some cases. A needle that shares a chemical that could also spread like a biological. You're going to have a lot of these problems. And I don't care like what ethnicity or identity you release like a biological agent or a chemical agent on. It's wrong. And what you're going to end up with is a portion of the population that needs help, a portion of the population that's going to be able to defend itself. And then, like I said, the first part, who's going to be vulnerable, they're going to need help. The second part, who's going to be insulated and they're going to do fine. And then you're going to have the rest that just want to go all in until they're wasted away. You're not going to be able to help that third group, no matter what you do. You could throw $1 trillion. You could throw you could send the entire planet into perpetual debt forever and never fix the homeless and drug problem. You can't do it. You have to have the emotional maturity to help the ones that need it and want it. And then the rest are just going to you're going to have to just figure out something to do with them. And I was talking to a friend of mine, and I suppose if you had like total pure like authoritarian powers, and somehow, aliens came and said, we're going to take your planet out if you don't do something about your drug problem. I suppose what you'd have to do is you'd have to put them each into drug tanks and figure out some way to manage their withdrawals and somehow physically keep them off it forever. But like, that's not living. And it'd be no different than like putting a prisoner in, a supermax forever. It's like, okay, you're keeping them out of society, but that's also not living anymore. It would be no different than an insane asylum where you're just keeping everybody belted down all day. A lot of people that I've talked to have considered imprisonment being like worse than death. And they think that no human should ever be imprisoned. And if you separate out the radicalization aspect, and if you just, person in cell, no TV, I guess you could give them books or whatever, as long as they don't eat the pages or plug up their toilet with them. If they start plugging up their pages with the books pages, then they would have to lose their book privileges. But no TV, no whatever. Like, so like, that's not living. Living in a cell, unable to, so then what's the next thing? Like, cryo? Putting someone in cryo for like 250 years or something, 500, putting someone in cryo for like 500 years. That doesn't make any sense. What would you do? Like, make them be soldiers and put them in big metal suits that don't allow them to do violence on anybody except for the bad guys, and they can't. That's a fantasy that's like super problematic. It's an interesting concept, but it doesn't work. It's a fantasy. So okay. So what would you do with like Joe Meth Head that refuses to get off meth, and he sleeps in a tent because 4 walls freaks him out? He likes the open air. So you're gonna put him in a box that he already doesn't want to be in. What are you going to do? Just like wait until the meth is out of his system and wait until he's like completely done with his withdrawals and everything. And then what do you have? Like, you don't know necessarily what's going to be left. If there's going to be a fully functioning person left in there. If they have an addictive personality, you're still not going to be baking that cake out of them. So, I'm out of coffee again. It's like, what do you do? And society just has not had these conversations. They want to get rid of the death penalty or whatever, or the death penalty, but only this way or that way. Even though you have these absolute like barbarians that are never going to get out of prison. Or people who could have been rehabilitated, you put them in there and they get 10,000 times worse. Then you have the fact that prisoners are being deliberately released and then weaponized on the population, aka anarcho-tyranny, while people who are just defending themselves are being locked up left and right, which is just further degrading any chance people have of defending their communities. So I don't have like a good answer for it, but it needs to be talked about. Like these criminal elements, this social contract that society has agreed to, where we're going to leave each other alone, is not being adhered to by a lot of people. Society shouldn't be selling drugs to each other. Drugs shouldn't be flowing into the country. Like, people shouldn't be doing drugs. But you can't stop people from wanting it. And what do those people really want? And I don't think that's been explored, because I don't think people have the maturity to talk about, sit down with the meth head and ask the meth head what they actually want, because they're screaming and throwing things on the ground because they're mad that somebody else beat them to the street corner. Right? So I saw a gal sitting in a street corner the other day with her cardboard, and I didn't read it and I didn't look at her. But behind her, which is what I was looking at, is a meth head like completely losing his mind. That presumably that she was at the street corner, because he walked up to the street corner, saw her there, and just started flipping out, throwing things, like spiking his garbage on the ground. I could hear him like screaming through like a pretty big intersection. She didn't even flinch, and she just kept looking at the cars and getting money when people brought her money and stuff, which is fine. Panhandling doesn't bother me, as long as they're not scamming. To me, panhandling's different than scamming. Scamming is when they're walking around with a fuel can when you full know well it's just a prop and they don't have a vehicle that they need to put fuel in. That shit just... props just bug me. Because it's like, don't lie. I don't like lying, because like, if they're scamming you, they could just be using the prop to also ambush you, to like close distance as they try to distract you with what's in their hands, and their buddies come around behind them and stuff. So if someone comes up to me with a prop, I just assume I'm about to be attacked by a bunch of people, and they go the other way. If they don't have a prop and they don't have anything in their hands, I'm much more likely to talk to them, as long as I'm like not in the middle of eating. I hate that. I don't know if I've told that story on this podcast, but I was in a McDonald's once at 7 a.m. with my buddies. We'd already been at work for like quite a while, because we get there super early, and so we were having breakfast, and like we're sitting there trying to eat, talking about work. This dude just walks up right in the middle of the McDonald's and is like asking us for money for food. And we both just like turned and we're like, dude, go take a hike. Like, that's just, and then really, my stomach wasn't happy, and it just sucks. It's like, you can't, it's such a weird guilty, this guilt they try to impose on you. And yeah, like, I have talked to quite a few homeless people. I have helped quite a few homeless people. Some maybe I shouldn't have, but I think every time I helped a homeless person, I think my heart was in the right place. Because it seemed like they were actually trying, and that they were actually somewhat of a semi-functioning person. And one of them, we basically gave him like the last of the money we had. And then the other one, it just seemed to like work out really well. And I had saved a really good chunk of money on a transfer. And I was able to make like a big deal in this guy's life. And I knew he was legit because I had talked to him tons and tons and tons of times in the past. Anyway, so I'm not a cold-hearted psychopath, like, but I also am under no illusion that the vast majority of them, giving them anything, does any good. If you're gonna do like, if you're gonna help, like, soup kitchens, you know, like, actually legitimately feeding them, but, or if you're running those like heating centers or cooling centers, but like, that's really dangerous, you know. Or if you're gonna hand out blankets or hand out tents or whatever it is you want to do, but you're going to have to reconcile with the fact that at some level you're going to unintentionally be helping very, very violent, abusive people. You're going to be helping good people too. There's also a good chance the stuff that you give the helpful people is just going to get taken away from the psychopaths. Which is oftentimes why they're so dang territorial, because they're used to just constantly getting robbed by each other. I've been guilt tripped by people in the past saying that most homeless are good, and if I just went and talked to them XYZ, and I don't know if that was like maybe second generation homeless in this area, but like, or maybe that was somewhere between, like, crack meth wasn't like too bad before fentanyl, but like, I don't go anywhere near them anymore. They will chase you. They used to just kind of get angry and like flail a little bit if you were in their area, sort of like how an animal kind of puffs out its chest to kind of like scoot you away because you're too close and they don't know you. But like, they just chase you around with weapons now, and I'm not about that. Oh man, my boom mic is just not liking this angle. The reason why I'm bringing up homeless again is because there's like a big normalcy bias that you can help them, and you have to be so careful, so careful, because you could be putting yourself in danger, and there's a good chance that help's not coming. And so if there isn't help coming to come help them, the chances are that if you get in trouble trying to help them, that there isn't any help coming to help you either. you also have to be really careful of the garbage that they leave behind, the needles, and you're going to see a lot of things that imply a lot of things that you can't unsee and unthink anymore. Stuff that doesn't go on the news, that's like the worst of the worst stuff going on in a lot of these Chaz zones. And I see the cities putting up a lot more of those big spiky rocks, and there's like whole fields now in the cities, whole fields that are these big spiky rocks. And that's really weird to me. I get it, but it's weird. I haven't quite like absorbed the implication yet of like coding every single one of your green spaces off of I-5 with giant spiky boulders. I'm gonna pause this again and adjust my boom mic thingy again. There we go. So yeah, I wish there was something to do. I wish there was I still think though, like, the best thing to do would be is if everybody would actually have public discourse where a lot of the emotion is taken out of it, and just be like, look, these are very real problems. People are being taken advantage of outside, and horrible things are happening to them. And it's the same thing with like people that are here illegally. It's like they're here illegally, but horrible things are happening to them, and that's not the answer. And it's the same thing in prisons. It's like this person broke the law, but horrible things are happening to them. And I don't know. Humanity seems to like to compartmentalize these things and not address them. I think the rest of these topics are really all over the board. I was gonna try to like segue the homeless thing, which I know I talk about a lot, into like never having actually been tested. Meaning like one of the YouTubers I watch, he's a self-defense trainer, Sonny Pasakis, talks about fear. He talks about like getting hit in the face and the kind of the interesting dynamic that revolves around getting like hit in the face, and how when people defend, they tend to like keep their face as far away as possible, because obviously you want to protect your head, but their margins are skewed in relation to the responses that they have available to them when they're defending themselves. Obviously, like, weapons are different, but like in unarmed. And he really got me thinking. I've always thought this my whole life, like, how many fights have I really been in? How many like real fights have I really been in? Not that you should go, avoiding fights is always the best. But like, if you ever do get in a self-defense entanglement, it's amazing how fast people can throw haymakers. And I forgot I feel like someone made a term once for this, when people just like run at you swinging with both hands just as fast as they can, which I don't even know how people's bodies move like that. Which is why you need really good leg work. And my weakness obviously was like, I never learned like Brazilian jiu-jitsu, so my ground game's like terrible. But there's an interesting dynamic of like thinking that people are just posturing to people who hit you one time and then they're gonna stop, to people who are trying to kill you. And you can never really know what that is, unfortunately. You just have to have a range of responses. But if you're not scared, I would say if you're not scared of getting hit in the face, not that you just like don't flinch or you just take it or whatever, but realize that you're going to get hit. The more I think about it, the more I realize it's a lot more pragmatic to be able to make decisions based off of the acceptance that you're going to get punched in the face. And I don't know if that means like punched square in the nose, or your jaw is going to get rocked, or your cheekbone, or whatever. Like, he doesn't differentiate between getting like socked in the jaw and getting punched in the nose, which is like basically someone throwing a straight versus someone throwing a hook. And that's probably just me thinking just way, way, way too much about it. But or someone wearing glasses versus someone not wearing glasses. And I actually messaged Icy Mike about that once, and I loved his answer. It was, take your glasses off. And I'm like, oh man, I'm so stupid. I don't know why I didn't. That's such just an obvious. And then I think that's what you'll see in fights, is like people taking their glasses off, which is very wise, because it creates a point, and all of the force is like transferred into that point, which is why if something even taps on your glasses, it hurts like hell. So, but you also got to make sure when you're in fight or flight that you don't whack your friends. I think the point of that is like, that's also a really good metaphor, again, for like home defense, again, for like homeless, gangs, road ambushes, vehicle or people ambushes in roads. A couple weeks ago, I was going to work, and some dude was intentionally like angling to not let me merge, even though probably tens of thousands of people merge here every day. He decided to make sure I couldn't merge, and he had his window rolled down. And so I'm sure I even told this story to somebody else, and they said, oh, he was probably egging you on for a fight or something. And of course, my naive self didn't consider that. I thought he was just being a jerk. But because it wasn't until I just let him go past me that I realized he had his window down. And he only had one window down, which would have been the window to be able to address me should he so choose. Granted, that could, maybe it was a junky car. Maybe that was his only window that worked. Or maybe he was a psychopath. And if you haven't been tested, and if your emotions just constantly take over, if you're fight or flight, you're going to either underreact or overreact. And after he did it once, I figured it could have been a mistake. But the second time, when the other person got out of the way to let me in, and then he accelerated, he didn't accelerate to get in front of me. He accelerated enough to be right up next to my window, which is extremely dangerous. He could have tried to throw something at me. He could have... Well, there's a lot of options he could have tried to do. And one of the stories I kind of always go back to is this happened to a friend of mine who was a lot older than me, but he told me this story. I don't know why he told me this story, but these two guys in a truck had got into it with him, and they had rolled their window down to basically attack him. And it was a glass beer bottle, and the dude ended up smashing his own buddy in the truck. Just leveled him with this beer bottle. And it never made it out the truck to hit this guy that was telling the story. And it's just like, dude, it's not... These people are psychos. It's not worth it. That was 24 years ago that he told me that story, and I still remember that to this day, because like if I see somebody's window rolled down, I don't want any fucking part of that. Let me tell you what. And this guy wasn't trying to go around me. He was specifically angling right at my driver's side door. Which is again why one of the 100 million reasons why I think it's unnecessary to go in the office, but whatever. I let him go by, and then that's when I saw that his window was rolled down, because I wasn't going to make eye contact with him. I was watching what his vehicle was doing, not what his eyes were doing, because at the moment his vehicle is the threat, not him. And just like you can see what somebody's hands and their shoulders are doing, you don't need to necessarily look into their eyes, or sometimes you can look into their eyes and see what their body's doing. Like after you've been driving enough, you can kind of like look at somebody's car and kind of see what they're going to try to do, what their options are. So fast forward to the last time I was commuting, and that exact same scenario happened again, but this time, like, I saw the first try, I'm like, okay. I saw the second try, I'm like, okay. And the exact same thing happened. The car got out of the way, the second car moved to cut me off. And I let them go too. I only looked at their car. I didn't look at them. I didn't look at their window. I just looked at them and their tires. And it ended up being a gal, and her windows were up, and she just wanted to cheat a little bit and not wait her turn to merge like a zipper. You merge like a zipper, and she just didn't want to wait her turn. And so she didn't want any beef. She just wanted to wait her turn. So, two completely different situations, two of the exact same situation with two completely different outcomes. And just until you're tested, like, you don't know how you're going to act, and it's always really hard to survive first contact, because if you don't have a range of responses, and if you aren't ready to react with overwhelming force, you could get taken out. But at the same time, while emotion can definitely save your life, you don't want to overanalyze either, because again, not legal advice, but you don't need to wait until someone's going to hit you. Like, the fight can start before the person hits you. This isn't legal advice. It's the same thing with vehicles. Like, there could be road rage going on without either of the vehicles making contact. And if you have the option to just let them go, 100% of the time, you should. And just because they tap your car doesn't mean you have to pull over. Again, this isn't legal advice. There's a lot of people that'll tap your car to get you to pull over to attack you. Ladies, I'm looking at you. Just because someone taps your car doesn't mean you have to pull over. And you can call 911 and say, hey, someone tapped my car and they look super dangerous, and I'm by myself, and I'm not fleeing a scene. I'm going to go find somewhere safe, and I'll XYZ, but this guy hit my truck and he looks like super dangerous. He's with 3 buddies, and I'm a gal, and I'm alone. I'm not stopping for this guy just because he tapped my car. And then if you're driving away and they keep tapping your car over and over again, you just stay on the phone with 911 and try to get someone to help you. If you don't have a range of self-defense options at your disposal, which unfortunately, when they wanted everyone to come back to the office, they also wanted to disarm everybody. And I swear during the Rona lockdown, I feel like just driving got 10,000 times more dangerous. Plus, you've got a lot of Teslas on the road now, and like, those things are a real bear to deal with, the Teslas flying around. On the way home from my last commute, a Tesla hit somebody. I assume it was the Tesla that hit the other person, because they were all out taking pictures of the not Tesla's vehicle, so I can only assume that the Tesla plowed into them, because they weren't looking at the Tesla. So if you haven't been tested before and survived your conflict, you really need to get training. You need to get training so you can have measured, level-headed responses. And you need to come up with plans, you know. If people are knocking at your door in weird hours and there's 2 or 3 people in your house, everyone's got to get up. It's sort of like a stand to, because your house is like your little base, and everybody's got to be ready. Have your little battle stations. And if you have kids, you know, and animals, you got to have code words so the kids and animals take their position. So then if it's grandma and she just didn't text you that she was on her way, or even if she did and she didn't text you that she's the one that pulled in the driveway, you don't want your family being held hostage, but you also don't want to react like psychos to everybody who shows up either. But the person rummaging around your garbage can could just be a homeless person looking for cans, or more likely it's a raccoon, or it could be someone trying to lure you outside, and there could be 2 people at the back door. Like, kind of going back to the YouTube video thing, there's YouTube videos that capture all this, and fear doesn't just come out of nowhere. Concern doesn't come out of nowhere. People have valid fears and valid concerns. I remember my mom used to dream all the time about people trying to get in and the doors being unlocked. And obviously that situation never happened to her, but her unconscious was constantly concerned about the doors being unlocked. And I think, and someone trying to get in, I think that's perfectly valid. And I think for people with armed guards in gated communities to tell you that you shouldn't be scared and that you shouldn't be allowed to have some measure of protection, or to tell you how many ammos you can have in your ammo zine, I think that's insane. And one of the interesting statistics, I don't have it pulled up because this isn't so serious, but there was this metric that they tried to pull up when they were trying to ban high capacity magazines, when they were like, the average citizen in a self-defense scenario only has to fire like a couple bullets. And I'm like, maybe that's true, but it's completely irrelevant. Like, when you look at like law enforcement shootings, I would still argue that the average civilian outtrains the average police officer in firearms. I know a lot of people want to argue with me about that, but I don't give a shit. I've heard of very, 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 very few law enforcement departments that actually outtrain the citizens, because it's not paid for and they don't have time because they're so busy. So they just do their quals, which is firing a couple bullets a year or something. So they mag dump because the adrenaline, and they want to go home okay. So I would say if you're gonna ban high capacity magazines, aka standard capacity magazines, or if you're gonna ban assault weapons, I think what you have to do, since I guess I would argue law enforcement probably gets into more shootings than average Joe citizen does, is, and supposedly they're more trained, which they're not, look and see how many bullets they fire in their self-defense situations, and look and see how many ARs they have. And I'm not saying like citizens should be the police or anything, but that's where the bulk of your data is going to come from. And they go, well, rifles are weapons of war, but you have the police running around with ARs and tanks and precision rifles. So, and they're not in a war. It's just about having different tools for different jobs. They also have shotguns. They don't go hunt birds, but they have shotguns in their vehicles. Why? Because there's certain situations where those are amazing tools. I've seen police videos where the police put shotguns to amazing, perfect like scenario use. Plus, you can get non-lethal rounds for your shotgun if that's the scenario you feel like you need to go in, less lethal. rounds. Most likely, probably less lethal rounds. Entirely possibly, hypothetically, less lethal rounds. And if really that was the case, if these governors really cared that much, then they would let everybody, or they would be actively encouraging everybody to get shotguns that could have less lethal rounds. Probably sometimes less lethal rounds, taser rounds, beanbag rounds, pepper bullets. They would be actively encouraging these things, but they don't. And the reason why they don't is because it has nothing to do with ARs or pistols or AKs or rocket launchers. It just has to do with them not wanting you to be able to defend yourself. Because they don't want you to have armor, they don't want you to have night vision, they don't want you to have drones, they don't want you to have radios. And it's only going to be a matter of time before they say, no, your door has too much steel on it, and the deadbolt is made too good into the frame of the door. It's only a matter of time before they're like, no, your house is too defensible. Like, that shit is going to happen, because let me tell you what, driving up and down the I-5 corridor, those humongous steel doors that partition, I assume ODOT uses those, in those giant concrete like sound barrier partitions. I have seen homeless people take sledgehammers to those giant steel doors, and they'll hit like the top right corner, and it looks, like a giant monster has been trying to smash through them. That's what it takes for you to be able to defend your door. It takes a huge steel door with basically vault bolts into a reinforced frame, and then have laminates on your windows, layers and layers of security and cameras. Like, so yeah, like pistols and ARs and shotguns or pepper sprays, or whatever, rock salt. Everyone's into weird different things, and I get it. I totally get it. There's people in apartments, there's people in cities. And then there's people in rural areas that like, what if a bear comes in my house? I don't know. Keep a beer on hand to roll over to? I don't know. Different bears are different in different areas. I don't care if a black bear tries to come in here. I'm not worried about it. But like, if I was in another part of the country where I had to worry about brown bears and grizzly bears, like, yeah, you'd better have something. And you don't want to be deploying bear spray in your house. Like, it's not just like two-legged invaders. And then you've got places with like these invasive like hog populations where you practically need like a belt-fed grenade launcher to defend your property. Like, I'm not gonna tell people what they need. And then you got like Florida, man, where like alligators are just coming into your house, and anacondas and shit. I don't know how to fight off an anaconda if it gets in my house. I'm not Ice-T or Ice Cube. I'm not going to tell somebody how to defend their house against that. So I think, or like, what if there's like giant dragon, like snapping turtles that start walking off with people's apple trees? I don't know what to tell you. Like, you're on your own. Maybe get some bananas for it or something. Like, and that's the point, is we shouldn't be telling each other how to defend our homes. Whether there's like flamethrowers or whatever, like, or electric fences. And I still think like traps are a horrible idea, because kids could get hurt that are being kids. Like, in my old place, kids used to jump our fence all the time. I didn't put anything up that was going to hurt them, but I had to deter them because if they ended up getting hurt, it would have been on me anyway. But I didn't do it in any way that was going to hurt them. And that's why I think traps are just a really, really bad idea. And I think traps are just really, really inhumane anyway, unless you're going to be monitoring it constantly and it's small and not something that's going to hurt children. And not, I think poisons, same thing. I think poisons are really bad. You're going to end up poisoning everything else. And I think if you're leaving poison around, you're just an evil person. So I think those would all be things that like the 3-letter agencies would have like a perfectly viable target. If someone's just leaving poison everywhere, you're just inhumane if you're doing that. So that went down kind of a dark path, but aside from those things, I think if a firearm is going to be your choice for home defense, I think I said it before, you have to have a plan, and your family has to know the plan. And if you've never been tested before, you need to go through training, and your family needs to go through the training, and everyone has to agree on the plan, because when civil unrest gets really bad, or when there's and lately I feel like there's been like an uptick in killers on the loose after their killing, and then the town has to go into lockdown until the violent perpetrator has been perpetrated, reclaimed, recovered, and the town has to go into lockdown. Like, yeah, the police may be like really Johnny on the spot because there's like, a strike team out looking for him, but like your house still has to be hardened enough to repel Johnny bad guy. You still have to have the tools at your disposal to resist Johnny bad guy. Even if the cops are like 2 minutes away, you don't want them in your house if there's like a manhunt going on, because they could hold your family hostage, and then the cops could even come, and then like if you don't have some secret signal way to like alert the cops that there's a problem going on, and which has been a real thing that's really happened, and people have really been taken hostage, and law enforcement has been slow on the uptake to realize like, hey, making eyeball movements, this person XYZ. So this is kind of like a long rambling thing, but like obviously defending your house is much different than defending your subdivision. And defending your subdivision takes like a lot more people's input. But like in 2020, between the civil unrest and the fires, because like different varying kinds of looting, you have civil unrest looting, and then you have opportunistic like the fires looting, and then you have hurricane looting, and then you have like tornadoes, although it seems like with the tornadoes there's not any looting afterwards for some reason, but maybe it's because like everybody's outside and everybody's already got a gun on them, and the looters probably just don't want any part of that. Seen the looting videos, or I mean I've seen the tornado videos, and I wouldn't, number one, those are heartbreaking, number two, I wouldn't mess with those people. And I think it's become the same way like in Texas and Florida after the hurricanes and the Carolinas. An armed society is really a polite society, and unfortunately like during the fires here, law enforcement started like trying to like dismantle the defensive teams that had been put together to protect the communities hit by the fires from the looters, and I really, really heavily disagreed with that. You should be allowed to defend your town, especially if your town's only got like 1 or 2 police anyway. What do you do? Like the sheriffs, like the handful of sheriffs aren't going to come help you, especially if like 5 towns have been hit with arson. So, but meanwhile, like I remember that, and there was like roadblocks downtown of armed separatist groups that law enforcement wasn't doing anything about, and they were robbing people at gunpoint. But then they could go like dismantle the roadblocks of the towns trying to defend themselves. So you have to really talk to your town, talk to your neighbors, talk to your towns about defending them. And I feel like I'm repeating maybe a lot of what I said like the prior episode, but it's because the rural towns still have time to get ready, and they still have time to have these discussions, because right after I made that last one where I was talking about the cheerleaders that got shot and the kid that was trying to pick up his siblings when went to the wrong house, and then the gal that turned around in someone's house and there were shooting incidents in all of them. I think right after that happened, like some kid had his ball roll into somebody else's yard, and the guy shot like him and his mom or something, and it's just like, that shit is so unnecessary. I don't know if they ever caught any of them, because these stories get buried immediately unless the media can play off it somehow. I don't care what race, ethnicity, red, green, blue, who you pray to, or don't. Like, you gotta be good neighbors, and you gotta like have measured approaches while the cities are dealing with their turmoil, and the suburban areas are beginning to have to deal with it. That the rural areas need to start having these discussions and not go crazy with these incidents, because definitely like attacks are going like way up, or at least they seem to be, and it's really hard to differentiate between people being dumb and actual attacks. So by the time it seems like maybe one's sort of kind of figured out, there have already been like 2 or 3 more. And so it behooves you, if you have a church group or if you have a neighborhood group, to actually talk to them. Because even if you try to do a quote-unquote neighborhood watch, if you haven't actually talked to the neighborhood on what would and wouldn't be acceptable, and to go over SOPs and all the same things that you'd go over in your house, like a neighborhood watch, a lot of people will consider vigilantism. Even if you have cars getting broken into every night, even if you have all your catalytic converters and fuel stolen, people will still see neighborhood watch as a vigilante group. And I get that, but it's because those groups, the ones that work well, I suppose you'd never hear of, but the ones that go off half-baked because they don't actually go through the scenarios to like talk through, what's the word I'm trying to think of, like peaceful resolutions. Not that there are peaceful resolutions to people stealing your mail or your catalytic converters or your fuel, but like someone just walking through the neighborhood and like conflict resolution, just, oh, you live over there, okay, cool, no biggie. Like I saw somebody I didn't recognize, and he was like kneeling down, and it looked like he had a spray tank or something. I thought I recognized him, but I didn't. But I'm like, he's probably spraying for weeds, and he's probably a part of that house over there. But like, if people are running around like half baked, looking for bad guys, it's that can't be like, that can't be your mission if you're on a neighborhood watch. Like, you also have to be ready to help people, but you also have to make sure that your neighbors don't get targeted. I remember one time these guys, they were doing something, and it like had blocked some of my neighbor's house, and I couldn't see it anymore, and they weren't any of the neighbors, and it could have been like a really scary situation because there was quite a few of them, and I don't think they were from our neighborhood at all, but they had started like parking cars in our neighborhood, and like we had to go out and talk to them. I'd be like, you can't just like suddenly start leaving your cars here. It was very weird. And they said, well, our car's stalled out, something. I'm like, well, you've got to get it out of here. You can't just like leave your car at this weird spot in our neighborhood. And then gave them like a certain amount of days, and we just watched it like a hawk and make sure more cars didn't pile up, and eventually they came and got their car. But it was like, it was super weird. So you got to be able to like de-escalate things, but you got to be ready to help people, but you also got to be like vigilant, because street racers fly through these intersections, and they fly through subdivisions, and they just cream everything. And people have been putting up concrete blocks and stuff because their cars have been getting destroyed. People drive right into their houses. Every couple blocks here, you can see where street racers just like flew right into people's houses. And are they bad people? No, I don't know. I don't think so in most cases, but it could be bad. Like, street shutdowns could be really bad. And I don't think everybody wants to block their houses with giant concrete blocks, but I'm not saying it could come to that or it should come to that, but like, I respect people that want to do that, because people are going to want to protect their catalytic converters, and they're going to want to protect their gas tanks, and they're going to want to, they don't want street racers going Dukes of Hazzard over the curb and into their house. And so I think everyone should just have those conversations. And I think this is going to be a really long episode, but there's one more thing I wanted to talk about. Well, besides malls are becoming increasingly dangerous. I guess I'll just say this part really quick. Malls are becoming increasingly dangerous, the ones that are even left. And it's funny, they're trying to do curfews in them and not let teens in the malls anymore without chaperones. They don't want to say like which ethnicities of teens are causing problems, but or in which areas specifically it's happening in, but that's another like measured level of response. A lot of people don't take into consideration like, oh, I would defend myself, I'd do XYZ. It's like, what if they're kids? They could be really big kids, they could be certain ethnicities of kids, they could be really small kids. There could be lots of them, there could be just one. You have to think about that stuff before you get into those situations. Okay, so I'm going to take one more break, and then I want to talk about my last topic, and I'm sorry this one's so long. If you're one of the 3 people that listen to these, I really appreciate it. So stay tuned for one last final topic. All right, part 3 or something. Um, yeah, I've been thinking a lot more about where the housing and the economy and the market and everything is going, and the Fed raising interest rates again, and when they're going to stop raising interest rates, if ever. And the last economy report, that I read from just a couple days ago said that the Fed still believes people have too much savings. They saved up too much over the Rona lockdown, and so they still have money to spend, which is why they're able to still buy things. Like, buying hasn't slowed down as much as they wanted, so they're going to keep raising interest rates more. And since people have more money, like, the prices of everything is still going to go up because buying hasn't slowed down to equalize. And a lot of this is translated into just massive layoffs, because I think the companies all see this coming. The big companies all see this coming, and so they're starting their layoffs, or they're not rehiring people. If they don't open new positions, the unemployment ratio to, like, open jobs, available jobs, is skewed with ghost jobs and that nobody's actually hiring for. And positions where people are employed at but not actually doing any work. I think a lot of this is still coalescing into, like, an extremely confusing recession, inflation, interest rate, housing market situation, where I think, like, commercial buildings are still being built, but they're probably going to be like commercial residential, like apartments, condos, and stuff. I can't imagine them building very many more, like, corporate HQ style office spaces right now with how much office space is available, but I definitely still see buildings being put up, which is really interesting. But houses, unless they're prepaid for, aren't being built, and a lot of the renovations have stopped again. Because I see a lot of houses on the market that are like, the insides are just like ripped out, but they're still $300,000-$400,000 houses. But I heard that, like, the materials are actually, like, available. It's just that this is kind of like the hedging that a lot of house repair people do when they see things start to slump down, because if they haven't been paid yet, they tend to stop doing their work until they get paid, if they lose faith that they'll get paid for perfectly obvious, sensible reasons. So I think that's part of what we'll see. And the debt ceiling, I think, is going to be really interesting too. I don't think, obviously, the government doesn't do massive layoffs, but they'll, it's been over 10 years since we've had, like, a big default and big shutdown, so I think we're probably overdue. But they'll get to get unemployment until everything, or the unemployment and or back pay. I get really confused. This isn't financial advice. I can't remember exactly if it's, I think maybe some of them get unemployment, but some of them get the back pay. It just depends. And unfortunately, like, parks are always the first thing to close down. But, like, I do think we're heading into a recession, obviously, like, a big one. And like I'll say, like I said last episode, I think this will be like a dip. It could be a gradual dip, or it could be a sudden dip, reset, whatever. But I don't think it's like the big one. I think we still have, like, one more opportunity. But what I don't understand, even though it seems like I'm repeating this every episode, what I don't know is, like, why housing in some areas is still going up. Like, in the Pacific Northwest, like, housing prices are still going up in some cases. I still don't know if that's the bank buying it all or what, but I think that's really weird, and it puts like a lot of stress on people in the Pacific Northwest. And I think it puts like an even bigger stress on the homeless population too. Sorry, not my dog in the background. I don't know what's going to happen with the houses here. I feel like it's going to go up a little bit more, and then it's going to go down. And I think there's plenty of precedent for that because there has been other housing bubbles in the past. Right, Ringo? Right. So there's been other housing bubbles in the past. They don't turn into slums afterwards or anything, but like you're going to have like the Rona being over with, and you're going to have people having to go back in the office. And people are going to have to move back to their offices because people are going to, these companies are going to have to be justifying these huge commercial buildings somehow. People are going to have to go back in the office or they're going to lose their jobs. I think a lot of people are spineless and they won't just say, no, I can do this at home, go fly a kite. And they won't make smaller satellite offices, which would be the other super obvious solution. They're going to have to justify these big buildings, these big, huge sunk cost fallacies. Some of them probably can close theirs down, and they will, but other ones have special infrastructure in those buildings that they can't easily move, which is also very understandable. They can't lease it out because they could be like secure buildings, which I've worked around many times, I should say. It's incredibly difficult to make a secure part of a building inside like a slightly less secure part of a building, and then getting it all audited and properly set up. It's not impossible, it just takes a lot of time. And if people don't know to work towards that, or they don't know that like well in advance, restricting and then unrestricting certain areas of buildings over and over again that require different security considerations is a pain. So I can't imagine that's going to be like restricting simple access is one thing, but like having actual specific different building restrictions for different areas is significantly more challenging. So I don't think you can just like repurpose a building, repurpose like parts of a building if it's going to need like varying levels of security access. It's not like, oh, this is a server room. Like, it'd be like that, but even more complicated and stringent. So I still think this is a housing bubble, and I still think eventually it'll pop. But right now, I don't know why it's going up. Besides the fact that the Pacific Northwest is an awesome place to live, which is why it's filling up with homeless and the houses are going up. I mean, maybe the banks are figuring that this is going to just be the new cool place to live, or maybe there's other environmental things because like the East Coast hasn't had bad storms in a year or two because we're between some kind of storm patterns. I don't know, but certainly not any more safe here. I don't know. But there's still some houses that are like fairly somewhat affordable. But a huge chunk of the houses I would say are like 400,000 to 500,000 and up. And those aren't selling at all. And I don't know what jobs, even if you had like a multi-person income, I don't know what jobs like two people could have, even if they're like fairly highly functioning, to be able to afford these places. I just don't. Which is why I think they're all investment properties. So anywho, it's kind of my housing update for the day. So I think that's it. And I hope you found this helpful. I know this was a long one. If you're one of the 3 people that listen to this, sometimes 4 or 5 people, I appreciate all of you. And check out my Ko-fi page and buy my book and tell your friends. And remember, we just want to be left alone and be calm, cool, measured, collected, and stay safe. And I will talk to you all later. Bye.
You've been listening to the Bunker Codes podcast. I hope you found our time valuable. Please exit safely and conduct yourself responsibly. Until we talk again, have a nice day.